Today I'm sharing a recipe for an Italian Easter bread. It's easy to make and it'll look lovely on your Easter dinner table. Hi sweet friends, I'm Mary and welcome back to Mary's Nest, where I teach traditional cooking skills, including how to cook from scratch and how to make bone broth, ferments, sourdough, and I teach home canning basics. So if you're new here and you enjoy learning about these things, consider subscribing. Well, this is a wonderful bread to make and it looks very festive when it's finished, and it's something that my mother always had on our Easter dinner table. The ingredients that you're going to need are very simple. The first thing you're going to want to start with is a half a cup of water and a tablespoon of sugar. This is just organic white cane sugar. And then you're going to need 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast. This is just active dry yeast. If you buy it in the little packages at the grocery store, it's just one package. And then you're also going to need a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and you're going to need a teaspoon of salt. This is unrefined sea salt. And you're going to need 3 eggs. And in here, what I've got is one stick of butter, which is a half a cup of butter. So 1 stick of butter and a half a cup of milk. And I've just warmed it so that the butter and the milk the butter is melted into the milk, and I've let it cool to room temperature. And the final ingredient that you're going to need is 4 1/2 to about 5 cups of flour. And I want to talk about the flour. Now you can certainly use all-purpose flour in this recipe, but if you want to make it more nutritious, you may want to try whole wheat. Now, whole wheat, 100% whole wheat, will make the bread a little denser. But what I like to use is this white whole wheat flour, and I'm able to find this right at my grocery store. It's becoming more popular. Now this is 100% whole wheat, but it's made from white hard wheat as opposed to red hard wheat, which is just this. Normally you'll see it at the grocery store just labeled whole wheat flour, but they're both 100% whole wheat. The only difference is this is made from red hard wheat and this is made from white hard wheat. And it's lighter in color, lighter in flavor, and it also creates a final product that's lighter in texture. So it's perfect for baking breads, especially if you're new to whole wheat and you want to introduce whole grains to your family, but you want to create a bread that's a little lighter and less dense than it would be using the hard red wheat, the traditional 100% whole wheat. But this is also 100% whole wheat, so it's really the best of both worlds. Now for your half cup of water, you want this to be at 110 degrees. Now don't worry if you don't have a thermometer to check it exactly. Basically, it's just very, very mildly warm. You don't want it to be hot, because if it's hot, it can kill the yeast, which we're going to add to this water. Now, if you're worried like, oh, is it warm enough? Is it cool? Whatever. Don't worry. It's better to err on the side of it being too cool than too warm. It'll just take a little longer for the yeast to wake up. So don't worry if you don't have a thermometer. Just have water that you feel is basically room temperature, and then add your yeast into that and you'll be fine. And we're just going to add this tablespoon of sugar into the water, and I'm just going to give this a little mix. This will give the yeast something to eat as it wakes up. And now we'll go ahead and add in our 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast. And I'm just going to give this a little stir, and then we're going to let it sit for about 5 minutes while the yeast wakes up. Now I'm going to be using my electric mixer, but you can certainly do this by hand. I've just put on the whisk attachment, and I'm going to put the 3 eggs into the bowl. And then I'm going to add, we need one more ingredient, 2/3 of a cup of sugar, and this is just white organic cane sugar. And I'm going to go ahead and add that in, get that all in there. And then what we're going to do is just mix this together until it's well mixed together. That just took about 30 seconds to mix up well together. And now I'm going to add in the butter and milk mixture, and we're going to add in everything else as well except the salt and the flour. We're going to put in the vanilla, and we're going to put in the yeast. And now we just want to mix all of this together until it's well combined. Well, that just took about another 30 seconds. Now I'm going to remove the whisk attachment and I'm going to put on the dough hook. Now we're going to start adding the flour. We'll start by adding a cup at a time. And now I'm going to put in my 3rd cup. I've got 2 cups in there, and I'll put in that 3rd cup. and then we'll send it for a whisk again. Well, I've got 4 cups of flour in there, and now I'm going to put in 1/2 cup. So that's why we have about 4½ to 5 cups of flour, because we'll put in this 1/2 cup, which will make 4½ cups of flour in there, and then we'll start to see if the dough comes together and starts to form a nice ball in the mixer, or if you're mixing this by hand, if it's starting to come together. Then we'll know how much of the rest of the flour we're going to need. Now this is still quite sticky, if you can see this. The dough is still quite sticky. So I'm going to add in about 1/8 cup. I'm just going to take it slow, and once it completely pulls away from the bowl, I'll know we've put enough flour in there. Now that extra 1/8 cup of flour was perfect. As you'll see, the dough has all pulled away from the bowl, and it's no longer sticky. You can touch it and you can pull your finger away from it without it sticking to it. Now I'm going to go ahead and add in the salt right on top there, and I'm going to knead this for about 5 minutes until it looks like a nice smooth dough. Now if you're doing this by hand, maybe about 10 minutes. Now when it comes to knowing if you've kneaded your bread dough long enough, you may have heard something that's referred to as the window pane test. Now I have not kneaded this for 5 minutes yet, and it may even need a bit longer than that, but after just a few minutes, I wanted to show you an example of what the window pane test is and how it's not going to work right now because this hasn't been kneaded enough. But if you're new to baking, this will kind of help you understand what people are talking about. You want to take about a golf ball size piece of dough. It's not an exact science, so don't worry about it. You want to make it into a ball, and then you want to press it into your hands so that you get a flat disc. Then you want to start to pull this apart, and you want to get it to the point where it's thin enough that you can see through. And now I want to say something about that when it comes to baking with whole grains, but for now I just want to show you. See, as we're trying to pull it apart to make it thin enough that we can see through it, it's starting to tear. Can you see that? See, it's got a hole in it. That tells you your dough has not been kneaded long enough. When you start to see those tears, you just have to go back and knead some more, whether you're kneading it in a machine or by hand. Now, that said, the window pane test means that, say this was kneaded enough and you flattened it into a disc and you pulled it apart and it didn't tear, that you could pull it apart nicely without getting these rips. And you could keep pulling it and pulling it and pulling it. And I'll show you when this is all done, to the point where it was so thin, you could actually hold it up to your eye and see through it. Now, if you're using all-purpose flour, that's an easy test. However, it's not as easy when you're using whole grain flour, which, as you know, that's most of what I use most of the time. But you will be able to see some light penetrating through it. And that's probably a good enough test. But to actually be able to see through it when you're using whole grain flour can be a little more difficult. So I just want you to know that. So when people are talking about the window pane test, it may not 100% apply to whole grains. So I've kneaded this for about 5 minutes. I've taken out a little ball of dough, flattened it in my hand, and now I want to show you, see, we can pull it apart without ripping it. And I think that is perfect. I think it's been kneaded enough. And you'll start to see it'll start to get thinner and thinner the more you pull, but it won't rip. And then, as I said, if you're using all-purpose flour, you'll get to the point where you can keep pulling this apart, where you'll actually be able to look through it. But it is a little tougher with whole grains. But as long as you can start to pull it apart and it's not ripping and you can hold it up and you can see light coming through it, chances are you've kneaded it enough. Now you just get your dough out of your mixer or up off your board if you're kneading by hand, and we're going to put it right into a bowl. Here, a large bowl that I've greased with some olive oil. You can use whatever oil you have on hand. We're just going to put that right down, turn it around a little bit, and we're going to flip it over to make sure the whole bowl gets nicely greased with the oil. And then I'm going to cover this with some plastic wrap, and then I'm going to put a dish towel on top to keep it warm and leave it in a warm place for about an hour to rise. Well, I let this dough rise, and I just want to explain a few things to you about the rising process. Now, you may hear people say, well, let it double in bulk. Let it rise for about an hour or until it's double in bulk or double in size or whatever the case may be. And that can be kind of difficult to figure out unless you had it in some sort of cylinder where you had something marked and then you could see exactly when it had doubled in bulk or, you know, something like that. Sometimes you see buckets like that. But if you're just a home cook and you're doing this in a bowl, to try to figure out double in bulk can be challenging. A better test to determine if your bread dough has risen enough is called the finger poke test. Very scientific. But what you do is right about the time that the recipe says that the dough should have doubled in bulk, which in our case for this recipe, it's about an hour. Now, it can even take up to an hour and a half, depending on the temperature in your home, the weather outside, so on and so forth. But if the recipe says about an hour, at that time, what you want to do is take 2 fingers and just poke them right into your dough. If they disappear, it's not proofed enough. If you put your fingers in and it just stays exactly like that, you poke them in deep and the holes stay deep like that, you've overproofed it. However, if you put them in and it comes and you can bring your fingers out and the holes kind of ease up about halfway back, it's perfect. It's proofed perfect and you're ready and done. Now, it may be a little hard to see on camera, but I took a picture and I'll insert it and hopefully you can see what I'm talking about. But just to review, if you put them in and it just collapses and closes up, you've underproofed it. If you put your fingers in and they stay and the holes stay exactly looking like what it looks like when you take your fingers out, then it's overproofed. But if you put it in and they kind of ease back slowly, it's perfect. Now, don't worry if you overproofed it. If you put your fingers in and you pull them out and nothing happens, the holes just stay like that deep, what you've inserted your fingers into, it's not the end of the world. Still bake the bread. What's going to happen is your rise in the oven is probably going to be about 20% less than what it would be if it were proofed perfectly. But don't throw it out. Don't waste it. Just bake it. It will be a little denser, but it's not the end of the world, and some people may not even be able to tell. Well, now what we'll do is we're just going to punch this down, and we're going to put this onto this board. I'm going to flour it, and I'll show you what we do next. Alrighty, now what we want to do is cut this ball of dough into 4 pieces. Now, if you have a scale, you'll be able to get it perfect, but we're just going to be old school here. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take each of these pieces and we're just going to roll them out until we get them into a piece about 20 inches or so long. Well, once you get them rolled out, all you're going to do, you're going to take 2 of the pieces that you've rolled out, you're going to set the other 2 aside, you're just going to pinch 2 ends together like this, and then basically all you're going to do is just braid it. Just like that. Nothing fancy. And then when you get to the end of the braid, you're just going to hold it together. You're going to bring it all around like this. You can see that. And then we're just going to pinch these ends together until they stay together. Next, what you'll want to do is get a baking sheet, and you can grease the baking sheet and then put your braid right onto that, or for easy cleanup, which is what I like, I put down a piece of parchment paper and then I grease the parchment paper. Then we're going to take our braid and we're just going to put it right down onto the greased parchment paper. And if you don't have one of these, it comes in so handy for this job. Certainly you could pick it up and you would get it on. I've done that in the past, but I got this recently and I just love it. It's a great cake lifter and all. And so look around for this. You often can find them in the baking aisle at your grocery store. But I'll also put a link in the description below if you're looking for one. They're just terrific. they're just so handy for so many different baking tasks. But in any event, okay, now what we're going to do is I'm going to cover this with a piece of plastic and a dish towel, and I'm just going to leave it for about 45 minutes to rest and rise a little, and then I'll show you the next part, which is the fun part where we put the colored eggs inside. Well, this is rested for 45 minutes. It looks perfect. And the other two pieces of dough, I did the same exact thing. Rolled them out, pinched two ends together, made a braid. And so I've got 2 baking sheets, each with one of these braids on it. Now, the fun part. Over in my plastic bin here, I have 6 colored eggs. They're raw because they're going to cook while, because we're going to put them into the bread. And I've got 3 for this braid and 3 for the other braid. So I'm going to pick some colors now. I'm going to be very careful with them. And you just nestle them in best you can in between the places, where you braided it. And I'll put orange. This is my husband's favorite color, orange. So I'll put an orange one in and just nestle that in. The bread's going to bake up right around it, so don't worry. Perfect. And now let's see. How about green? Alrighty, and I'll put a green one right in here and nestle that right in there. Now we're going to take a little egg wash, and this is just 1 egg mixed with a tablespoon of water, and I'm just going to brush the dough. This is going to help make everything look nice and golden brown. And then next we do the sprinkles. We'll put all the colored sprinkles around. They're flying everywhere. But I like to be generous and give it a lot of lovely color. Oh, this is just going to be adorable. Perfect. Alrighty, now we're going to pop this in a 350-degree oven. That's 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's going to bake for about 30 minutes. Well, I just took it out of the oven. It took exactly 30 minutes, and look at this glorious Easter bread, this glorious Italian Easter bread. Well, I'm going to put this on a cooling rack. We'll let it cool a little bit, and then we'll slice into it. Well, I let this cool for a bit and put it on my cake plate, and now we'll have to cut into it and see how it looks. Oh, it's just glorious. It's still warm, but I can't wait, so we'll just go ahead and cut into it. And listen, I don't know if you can hear this. Oh, it's beautiful. Alrighty, here we go. And now, let me cut a part here where this beautiful brown crust, golden brown. Oh, look at how lovely this came. See this white whole wheat? It just is light in color, texture, and I'm confident flavor. Look at this. And I also want to just sort of pull it apart in the middle here so you can see. Look at this. Look at how beautiful this is. Well, I'm going to give this a taste. I'm going to taste this part with this beautiful golden brown top. Mmm. Delicious. Oh, it's light and fluffy and with just a hint of sweetness and this beautiful crust. Just delightful. I hope you'll make this and put it on your Easter dinner table. If you'd like to learn more about traditional cooking, be sure to subscribe to my channel and then click on this video over here where I show you how to make hot cross buns. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country kitchen. Love and God bless.